Oh, I'm so happy I got that reaction. Jennifer Hansen. Well, excuse me. Hi, this is Marco Elias from Albany Realty. Today, I'm really excited to share with you part 2 of our Dreams on Horseback series. Today, I'm with Jennifer Hansen, the founder and executive director, the brainchild of this wonderful organization. Hey, Jen.
Hi, it's nice to see you, Mark.
Good to see you too. You and I have had such good conversations in the brief time we've known one another. I feel very close and comfortable with you. It's such a bizarre thing to have such a natural chemistry with someone. And what I've learned is we both kind of have this energy, this enthusiasm for life, for horses, for helping people. You and the way you be are very contagious.
Well, thank you. You obviously as well. I during my college graduation, my college roommate's uncle gave a toast, and he said, "Water seeks its own level," and I think that naturally happens where you kind of gravitate towards people who have kind of some similar spirit. So,
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with you. I definitely would agree with you. So, with that, I managed the water, the stream kind of pulled me to you and your organization. So I have so many questions and so much to talk to you about. First, what inspired this? Because you have a lot of work, a lot of challenges, a lot of human beings that you oversee, their well-being. Um, how did this all start?
well, not really intentionally, frankly. I had always loved horses. I was one of those kids who would have given my left arm to ride. Anytime we were out someplace, Colorado on a vacation or anywhere, if I could go on a trail ride, that was kind of the highlight of my vacation. And so, kind of fast forward to when I came to Ohio State for law school, and pretty stressful time. And so my outlet at that time was to go trail riding. And I went so often that I became a trail guide and finally ended up getting my first horse, Daisy, during law school and started to volunteer. I had this horse, and my church was having a barn party. And so I offered to take Daisy to their barn party so they could have a real horse at the barn party. And the kids, instead of doing any of the other crafts and games they had all set for the night, for 2 hours, the kids just lined up just to touch Daisy. And I totally got that. And at that point, my law job was kind of slowing down a little bit, and decided, this wasn't an underprivileged church. So, what about the kids who would never have that kind of exposure? And so I just started trailering Daisy into downtown Columbus as kind of an outreach program, to challenge kids to kind of think outside the boundaries of their neighborhoods.
Wow, that's amazing. And is Daisy the horse that Holly, one of your volunteers, has a real strong affinity for?
No, my Daisy was not a brat. I'm pretty sure I watched Holly's video and she was talking about that Daisy. No, this is a different Daisy.
Different Daisy. Okay,
Unfortunately, Daisy is no longer alive,
okay,
but it was a very different Daisy.
got it. So this was kind of happenstance, and it sounds like you were really inspired and touched by the reaction, the interaction between humans and horses. Now, how many years has Dreams on Horseback been in existence?
Sure. That was back in 2002, so 18 years ago.
Got it.
And so back to that whole unintentional part,
Yeah.
certainly I did not go to law school to start a therapeutic writing center. And really, the journey has been one that has been really carved by hands that are other than mine, where people would just really come into the door and they'd have a need. So I started with the outreach programs, but then people would show up where, they were doing Special Olympics and really wanted to get involved in, the Special Olympics equestrian, or where we had a school who needed a vocational program. And so really people just came to the door with a need, and it just seemed like miraculously the resources were there to be able to expand into that program. And so it really has been a path that's been carved by the community, not an intentional effort on my part, for sure.
Yeah. While it might not have been intentional, it sounds like you were very clear that there was something very authentic occurring between you and other human beings. And I know what that feeling is like, having been an animal assisted therapist, working with people, um, having been into music and teaching other people about music. There's something really special about sharing, sharing yourself, sharing a gift, sharing an experience. It opens up your heart, and really, it's about love. Really, what it's about is that you are very loving. You're loving a lot of people, and that in turn comes back to you in spades.
Sure. Well, for sure, the saying about how volunteering really is almost better for the volunteer than it is for the recipient of the volunteer efforts. My goodness, that's so true. And I think that's just because we can all wallow in our own stuff.
Mhm.
And when you get out there, you might forget about things that might just be bothering you that really you realize are not that big
Mhm.
of a deal relative to what maybe the rest of the world is dealing with. It absolutely improves your life. And these programs or the animal therapies that you were around, I think that those kinds of things, they people gravitate with similar loves, like you said about how we kind of are connecting, and so we get that a lot around all of our programs.
Yeah.
It's pretty special.
So the program has participants in a couple different areas: patients who are experiencing Alzheimer's, military veterans, um, children who may be atypically developing or having their own social challenges, psychological challenges, maybe even economic challenges. Um, you bring a wide assortment of young to old people. That's really interesting. In your experience, um, what's a story, or maybe a participant that you've grown to know very well? I got to imagine you know a lot of these people very well.
Hmm. For sure. Um, Probably, and I think I tell this story a lot, but that's probably because we have such a long history. And that story is probably of Ava. Um, Ava came at the age of 4 and was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And her mom, Heidi, had heard about equine therapy and decided that she wanted to give it a try. And so Ava started coming for half-hour riding lessons, and totally nonverbal, had never said mama, dada, nothing. And when we would pull a horse out and it had a different color halter, which is what goes on the horse's head, she'd just lose it. She'd scream and Heidi would have to take her out of the barn. Well, within 6 months, with these riding lessons, Ava said her very first word to our horse Tater, and that word was walk. And so then our next challenge was, okay, now we want to say walk on, combine 2 words.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, the speech continued to grow with Ava. She just really had an affinity for working around the horses. They got each other, the nonverbal cues, and their relationship continued to develop. When Ava was having troubles reading at school, Ava or Heidi would bring Ava to the barn with books, and we have pictures in the barn where Ava, who wasn't willing to read to her teacher or to her mom, she was willing to read to the horse. Um, Fast forward another year, um, not the connection with Ava impacts not just what's happening here at the barn, but then also what's happening elsewhere. So at school, in her grade school, Ava would be asked to participate in a walkathon at school, and she just wouldn't do it. She couldn't get out with the other kids and walk the track, and there were lots of activities going on. And we would take a horse so that the kids would have kind of a reward when they made their laps. And as long as Ava was able to come back and even just be in the vicinity of the horse, she'd pick grass, look at dandelions, whatever, she'd walk a lap and then had to come back and just get centered. Just being in the area with the horse allowed her to do something other typical kids would.
Yeah.
Then I guess the kind of what I see as the crowning um, accomplishment most recently was Ava's a part of our Special Olympics team. And so for the first couple of years, she's pretty competitive. And when she'd compete, she wanted to win. And so at the award ceremony, they put the athletes up on their podiums and, present the awards. And if Ava didn't get first, she'd completely lose it. She would flail and scream. She'd try to knock the person off of the number one spot to the point where we had to physically move her away from the stand. And every year we'd kind of practice, okay, Eva, this is what happens when you don't win, and this is what you do. And every year it was, having to physically remove. And so finally, 2 years ago, we could see she completed her class. We could see they kind of pre-line up the athletes in the order that they're going to receive awards. So we could see she wasn't going to win. So everybody's ready for the extraction. We are poised and ready, and they put people up on the stand, and Ava stops at number one, and they say, no, no, you need to go down to number two. And she went down, and they announced the awards, and Ava kind of lifted her hand and turned towards the person in the number one spot. And we're all like, oh my gosh, she's going to deck him. And she turned, this girl who was nonverbal at the age of 4, at the age of 12, turned to the athlete in the number one spot and stuck out her hand. And she said, congratulations, but I'm going to beat you in the next class. And she did. So I love that story because it shows that what we're doing isn't about learning how to ride a horse, but they're learning how to ride a horse, but it's about personal development. So it's about helping Ava speak, helping her learn some social skills. She now has a job. She feeds our horses lunch on the weekends. And so it's really about developing the person as a whole to be the best person they can be.
Wow. You have a background in law, but yet you're so psychologically inclined. Where do you think you've honed these sensitivities from? Because just in speaking with you, clearly you have a higher emotional quotient than most.
Well, that's very kind of you, but I think you're dead wrong. I actually am just very, very glad. I am so blessed to get to work around some extraordinary people. I often wonder what I did to deserve the extraordinary staff who come to the barn, who have their masters in education or in psychology and business. So no, I just am really surrounded by some very good people.
So, take Ava, for instance. If Ava was my child, or you just take my son Ethan, if he was atypically developing, I might have some concerns about the horses being so big and the possible danger of having him interact with horses and being put up on there and maybe even falling. How do you manage that for parents that have some real apprehensions?
Yeah, you're spot on. So in the development of all of the programs, therapeutic riding has been the last thing we added, and that was really because I was terrified. I mean, here we are combining 1,200-pound flight animals with some small, tiny little riders who have special needs. That's a lawyer's nightmare, and so really didn't even go that route for the longest time. And finally, with the development of all of the programs, I've kind of learned patience to understand that kind of the noise from the community builds to a point where suddenly I realize, okay, we can do this. We are ready. We have the resources. We have the infrastructure. We as an organization are ready to take a step into this next new program. And that's really what happened with the therapeutic lessons. I'd say about 8 years ago is when we started thinking, okay, we can start moving into this. It took us 2 years of research into how do we do this to keep everybody as safe as possible. And so we are a premier accredited center by the most stringent certification organization that I could find. And all of our staff, we dot the I's, cross the T's to make sure that we are as safe as possible. There are no perfect guarantees. These are live animals. They're not merry-go-round horses. But we certainly do everything we can to keep people safe. And the other thing that's so important is the horses so the thing that's so magic about horses is horses read the nonverbal communication. That's how they survive in the wild. And so they understand when they have to be more gentle. I'll never forget with one activity that we did with the city of Columbus with a therapeutic rec program, and the participants had multiple challenges who were coming for that day, and it was one-to-one aid to a participant, and one participant wasn't willing to participate in the education program outside at the arena, and they were inside in the stall aisle with his aide, and he was slumped against the wall and really was not very high functioning, wasn't speaking, kind of moaning, and had, just was very limp, I guess, against the wall. And I brought the horse in, Jane, from the education program, and he was slumped at the side of the aisle, and the aide was right here, and I was going into the stall. And so here I'm walking this tall animal, and this person is down on the ground, and he lurched himself up off of the ground, and the aide kind of caught his arm, and I stopped the horse, and he launched himself at the side of the horse, and she just stood there and just let him drape himself on her side, and the aide just started sobbing, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I haven't this young man is very he doesn't like touch, he doesn't like anything tactile, and the fact that he has gone over and is touching this horse is unbelievable, and this horse did not move a muscle." They really get it. So it's kind of a combination of certainly taking as many safety precautions as we can, but it's also a lot about the extraordinary nature of the horses who we get to work with.
Yeah, I think you give a lot of credit to the horse's ability and not enough credit to perhaps the preparation that takes place. In my experience, and you know horses far better than I, but I got to imagine the exercise you give the horses, the way you care for them, the fact that you're setting up the horses for success, and with multiple, you have almost 13 people, I understand, per rider to care for a rider
Well, it's actually 13 people for a class.
per class.
So that might be one riding lesson, and then there are 13 volunteers supporting usually 4 riders in a class.
Additionally, I think the humans also give cues to the animals. And when the humans are experiencing such high level of peace, it rubs off on the animal. And so I do believe the horses absolutely have some really innate special capabilities. I also have a background in training and psychology with animals, and I know that the humans are also setting the scene. They're responsible for creating the environment for calmness and peace. So I think that it's dual sided, and you are the steward to that environment. So I guess my question is your home as peaceful as the barns are?
Oh gosh, no. Especially with my 2 kids homeschooling virtually. No. In fact, I can't wait to get back to the barn. It's been tough. So many of us who can stay at home are staying at home, and I so miss being down there. What you talk about is so true. Um, the volunteers who surround the horses when our participants are working with them, that's something, I knew that the therapeutic riding was going to help the riders, but I never anticipated this incredible volunteer group and how that really is a group we're serving as well. I mean, this is a place of peace for them too. And when you talk about how the horses respond to the calm nature of the people around them, I really do see and hear that this is as therapeutic for our volunteers. And you're exactly right that the horses are totally reading their body language and their energies as they're working around them. So,
Yeah.
but no, my house is nowhere near. It's only quiet because I've threatened everybody if they interrupt that they're going to be in big trouble. No one's getting dinner if they interrupt.
Nice. That's a good threat. Do your kids participate as volunteers or actually interact with the horses in any way?
Mhm. Yes, my oldest, Madeline, she actually just trained for to be a volunteer sidewalker. Both girls are lucky; they're living the dream I always had, which was have the opportunity to ride. And so they've both grown up in the lesson program. Madeline really doesn't ride anymore, but she loves to support. She is definitely a caretaker, and so she comes and helps as a sidewalker, and then also helps as a junior staff member. We have opportunities for some of our riders, our traditional riders, to be able to come and be teachers and a little closer peer mentors for our participants in some of the classes. My youngest, Lauren, no, she still likes to just get down there and clean. Well, they both have to clean stalls
Mhm.
to get to ride, but Lauren really still likes the riding at this point.
Yeah, I have a vision since, I've connected with your staff and I've expressed real high level of interest in volunteering and getting involved. Next week, I'm seeing some of your staff at the barns. Thank you, by the way, for extending that invitation. I have this vision of like falling in love with one of the horses at the barn and like cleaning and petting, and then that horse being so happy to see me every time, and us having this bond to help others. I created this whole story in my mind where I fall in love with one of the horses.
But not taking the temperature, I think, is what I heard.
Yeah, no, no, I'm good with that. I think I never had to take an anal temperature with any of my kids, and I don't expect to be doing it with the horses. Unless you tell me it's a requirement of passing the necessary training, then all right, I might consider that more closely.
No, that's definitely not in our training series. You're good. But yes, I warn you, I often joke with people that inside of our barn door is quicksand. And so you step in, and if you have an inkling you want to get involved, then you quickly find lots of ways to get involved. It's pretty
Yeah.
addictive.
Yeah, it was really astonishing to me how many human beings go through the barns, go through the facilities. From speaking with you, and I may be off with my numbers, but it sounded like you had over 125 volunteers, over 72 weekly riders, and I think it was 190 participants. Did I get that right?
Well, so 72 therapeutic riders, and then we might have another 100, if we're in our full season, which we aren't right now. We're kind of closed down. So in total, it's 190 participants every week. Mhm.
Wow,
Yes, it's busy.
that's really busy. Do the horses ever get a nap?
They do. We actually are really careful about tracking our horse hours and making sure that they are not overworked. We have opportunities to give them vacations this year. We actually just started a new schedule so that we have session breaks. So we have a week where the horses just get a week of quiet and we don't hold programming. So we were really excited to be able to do that to make sure we're taking care of the horses.
Yeah. I have interacted with a lot of nonprofits in the animal world, and from what I found, many of them don't have the systematic processy, the business savviness, um, don't have enough volunteers, and I acknowledge that you're growing at a pace that's, you're definitely growing, and you need funding and need volunteers. But what you've accomplished since 2002, it's very extraordinary. It's
Hmm.
not the norm.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We're pretty proud and feel very blessed to be able to, offer these kind of programs. And I think we're really fortunate with where we live. We're in a pretty vibrant community where people do want to get out and help their neighbors. We have some great companies who help support us, whether it's in work days or financially. So, I think really, again, it was not crafted with my hand. And so, um, yeah, I think that we're pretty blessed.
So let's talk money, because without money, none of this can happen. Horses are very expensive. My sister used to
Yes.
have a horse. I don't know how much it was, but it didn't last very long because I do recall the cost was so exorbitant. You told me that to care for a horse annually, it's upwards of $10,000.
It does. It costs us about that much. We like to joke that we have a barn full of mature horses. We like the horses who come to us with experience, so we kind of know that they are seasoned and we have less surprises from the response standpoint. However, more mature horses come with higher vet bills because they need chiropractic work and joint supplements, and we do not skimp on the care of our horses, the physical care. They get massages. I don't even get massages, and our horses get massages. So, wanting to make sure that we are as good of stewards as possible of these amazing animals. And so, yes, they are quite expensive to keep. Plus, we're kind of in downtown Columbus area,
Sure.
so it's
I,
not cheap.
I talked with somebody in my community. He's actually a family member of my wife. Really great guy, Ben Cosberg. He is the development director at Nationwide Children's Foundation. And what he told me was very interesting in that ultimately his job, his performance metrics are how much money did you bring into the foundation? But the way he does it is really interesting in that he offers value up front. He creates a conversation so that the donor can see the possibility of touching someone out there. And that even donors that just want to give money blindly, he doesn't actually just accept it. He goes that deeper step to find out, what makes you tick, the donor. Great, we have these different areas that you can contribute money, your time, and so forth. I got to imagine that there are donors out there, companies, individuals that can make donations financially and help the organization. Where can that money go?
Sure. Um, so yes, and we've been blessed by some, and certainly are always looking for some new introductions. We are hoping to actually continue to develop our relationship. Everything is on hold right now, and certainly, it's a tough time to be pursuing any kind of financial support for anyone, for any nonprofit. But we have had some big plans in store for this year that have been kind of put on hold. We are a therapeutic center, and we are starting to open up for physical therapy. So we've been doing some research into what's called hippotherapy, which is physical therapy with horses. So that's intentional physical therapy while the riders are on horseback. And we are working with a PT from Nationwide Children's. And part of what we need to do is we need to be able to build a ground floor therapy room. And so we have the sketch of how we needed to modify our facility to do that. We're looking at about a $350,000 capital campaign. And that will allow us to take our programs to a whole new level. So certainly that's something where we're going to have to be patient and figure out when people kind of get their feet back under themselves, how we proceed.
Sure. So kind of walk me through that. What I'm hearing you say is that the vision is you can actually provide physical therapy to recipients that are riding the horse, and you can modify their postures and the movements of the rider in such a way that it actually is part of their therapy plan.
Absolutely.
Got it.
And that's a very common practice around the country. We just haven't instituted it yet, just because right now at our center, the only temperature controlled space is upstairs. So that's not tenable for a therapeutic center. And so step one is for us to equip our centers so that this temperature controlled physical therapy space is on ground floor and accessible to all of our participants. And then we already have the conversations going with physical therapists who then are trained for this kind of practice. So we already have a lot of the big challenge is done. We have the herd, we have the volunteers, we know how to get the education and the certification for it. We just need to do the facility modification. But
Got it.
it's amazing what you can accomplish on the horse's back. First of all, the heat of the horse helps to loosen up the muscles. Sometimes where maybe participants just really don't want to go into a traditional therapy room where they might be stretched a little bit, if they're sitting on the back of the horse and they are turning over to throw a basketball in a basketball hoop, or maybe they're laying back on the back of the horse while they're stretching out their back, or they ride on all fours. The number of postural positions and the muscles that they can actually stretch and balance and coordinate is the research out there is really incredible. It's so compelling.
Interesting. What calls out to me is just touch is a very powerful thing
Hmm.
in itself. It creates serotonin. It creates all those juices that are facilitate healing.
Hmm.
Perhaps we all need a little bit more touch, just in terms of human to human. I'm a hugger. That's the Jew in me. The Jews and the Italians were huggers. So I get that as much as possible. Corona, this period of time, is killing me because I have no
Sure,
contact.
sure.
And my wife is tired of me. She doesn't want.
I stay back. Not another, not another.
Yeah. So was there a demand for this? Did participants demand this non-verbally or like?
For the physical therapy, we
I
have a lot of riders who currently have some physical diagnoses
got it.
who are already benefiting. An ancillary piece of the therapeutic riding is that they are getting some of that muscle development. However, it's not intentionally designed by a physical therapist. So we already can see the benefits of some of the physical therapy without it being an intentional physical therapy session. Plus, we do get referrals from doctors at Nationwide Children's. And, with the comments of if only we had the physical therapy aspect as well.
Yeah.
So we know the need is out there. We just have to kind of get our facility and get our staff up and ready to accommodate.
Yeah, it would seem natural for a rehab organization, educational institute, interns, people that are in the profession learning to be trained and certified. There's all these support and resource groups that can participate in this. It's actually kind of creating an entirely new possibility for your enterprise. It's pretty cool.
You're exactly right. In fact, a lot of this conversation is a result of a PhD student, Julia Mazzarella, from Ohio State University. So we are blessed to be so close to OSU, and we get a number of interns from different departments. And Julia is getting her PhD in physical therapy, and so she's been leading the charge about this hippotherapy and implementation and what it looks like and how we could roll it out and move it forward. So yes, the educational institutions, the hospital institutions, the accessibility to be so close to downtown of our centers, to all of the people who could use the help. It really is. It's perfect. It's all of the resources are lined up.
Yeah, I'm putting it out into the ether that some executive somewhere hears about this.
Hmm.
Maybe they have a child. Because having your own children's very intimate experience when they may have a child on the spectrum, maybe even a child that was injured in the armed forces, that they have deep pockets. They see the opportunity for this type of therapy, and they make a contribution to really make a difference. So I'm putting that out.
All right.
I'm
I
putting that,
appreciate that.
yeah, putting that out into the ether. How else can people contribute to this organization, to your organization?
Sure. So certainly the financially is a big help. This has been a horrible time, as far as an organization from being completely shut down. And everybody is anxious about their finances. And so, we anticipate that the donations are going to take a hit. And in addition to financial support of the programs, because unfortunately, well, or fortunately, our biggest cost are our horses. and they don't stop eating. They don't stop needing exercise. They don't stop needing care. In fact, the care is increased because we don't have all of the activity in the barns, and we want to make sure we're keeping our horse staff ready for when we can bring our students back. We can't just get the horse out of the stall and just put them in the arena. It takes a lot of work to keep their heads and bodies in shape for that. So, that's a really big concern. Outside of financial, certainly it takes a lot of love. It takes a lot of heart. And so if people are interested in volunteering, like you talked about our volunteer corps, again, we're so grateful to have about 125 trained volunteers, but everybody's life kind of ebbs and flows in availability. So we're constantly offering trainings for people to come. Maybe they want to do give a commitment of coming for a 9-week session for 2 hours as a sidewalker, and then they have to take the summer off or something like that. Then we rotate our volunteers through to help support these riders, because like you said, an hour lesson can require that we have 13 volunteers who can support those riders. If people aren't interested in a weekly commitment, we also do have some farm days. We have lots of companies who want to see, let their employees kind of get their hands dirty and come and see a local nonprofit. And so it's a great day to come out to the farm and help us clear some of our trails so that our military can go on the trail rides, or, to come help paint fence or that sort of thing. Or maybe do a little team building with their group and feel this experiential learning opportunity of working with the horses. We have a professional development person who will lead team building for companies. And so maybe they want to pay for that service and then spend an afternoon working. So we have work days that certainly are available, or family days. We're really happy to be a part of the Disney Points of Light organization. And so we'll host family work days where we can then earn some Disney passes thanks to people's hard work to then be able to auction off to support the programs.
It's awesome. That was really, really awesome. Jennifer, the time just flew by. I mean, that was more than a half hour.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've talked your ear off. I'm
No,
sorry. You ask a simple question and I run.
no, this was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to share everything about you and what you're doing. I'm so looking forward to going to the stables and meeting some of the team members. And for more information, to make donations, where do people need to go? Who do they need to speak to?
Sure, they can check us out on the internet, Dreams on Horseback, www.dreamsonhorseback.org. You can make connections there to volunteer. There's a volunteer link to make donations there. Certainly our phone number is there. And so whether it's to volunteer, to become a participant, or to be a supporter, that's probably the best place to go.
Awesome. Jennifer Hansen, founder and executive director of Dreams on Horseback. So good to be with you. My name is Mark Elias from Albany Realty. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Mark.